The last video introduced data visualization with matplotlib. This video focuses on Boxplots, and we're actually going to use another data visualization library called seaborn. After kind of reviewing both possibilities, seaborn and matplotlib, I decided that seaborn would be easier to use for the type of boxplots that we would like to make, and I'll point that out as we go through. So this is another data visualization library. And this is a perfect example of where we want to choose the right library for our needs. Because we want to be able to look at the distributions of, I think we're looking at GDP in this one. Yep, we're going to look at the GDP per capita by continent. So we're going to still focus on the 2007 data, but we're going to categorize our data by continent and then graph how the GDP varies within each continent. So here are our imports. We're importing seaborn as SNS, as is the convention. We're getting our Gapminder data, making the Gapminder data frame. All of this you've probably already done, but it's here just for convenience. And then here I'm going to define a couple of variables. We could certainly just put these all in line in our when we call the boxplot function, but I thought maybe looking at it as in terms of x and y might be informative. So I'm specifying x as the continent. That's a categorical variable. So basically it puts the observations into groups. And then y is our quantitative variable, which is a numerical variable where each of our observations, which are the countries, each one of them has a unique quantitative number associated with it. And so we specify x as the continent and y as the GDP per capita, and the seaborn boxplot function knows to organize the graph in this way, which we're about to see. So I also have an argument for the data that we're using. And here is the box plot. Notice I have a color palette specified. That's from looking into the seaborn documentation and choosing a color palette, which is kind of a fun activity. There are several different collections of colors that are pre-made for the user. So we can see here our box plots, and we can look at how GDP per capita is distributed within each continent, and we can make some comparisons. The center line is the median GDP, and the box in the center shows the distribution of the middle half, the middle 50% of countries have GDP within that range that's shown by the box. Notice what's something interesting here is that we have some outliers in Africa and definitely some outliers in the Americas. My guess would be that those are Canada and the United States. So, and then in Africa, we have several outliers. Maybe some of those more oil-rich countries tend to have higher GDP, and that's visualized here. Outliers are identified relative to the interquartile range, which is again that center middle 50% of the distribution. So if we have a wider interquartile range, then outliers are less likely to be identified. So in Africa, where the IQR is very small, concentrated in a very small range, outliers appear more readily. Okay, so hopefully that gives you a good idea of how we can create a box plot in seaborn, a data visualization library.